Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. What are we here to do? We're here to redefine what a valuable education looks like. We're here to show people that the door is open in the construction industry for any kind of life that they want, whatever kind of house, whatever kind of vacations you want to take, whatever kind of car you want to drive. It's all attainable in construction, totally merit-based industry, which means what? For all your hard work, you get a guaranteed return. And if you really put in a little extra effort, that return can be exponential. If you're already in the industry, we want to give you the mentorship. We want to make sure that you have the perspectives and the stories from people that have already found success in the industry so you can take your career to the next height. If you're interested in the industry and you don't know what the first job looks like, maybe you're interested in the trades, go back, look at other episodes. You could also go to the link in any of my bios on social media. And when you click that link, right there will be 3 free videos telling you about what it means to be a construction manager. Maybe that's your first step. Maybe you want to go into the trades and then become management. But there's a ton of information about how to start a career there, what it is, what a day in the life is like, how much money you can make, and how to get started. You can also find, which will be applicable to this episode, which we'll talk about in a second, but plumbing, HVAC, electrical, drafting, estimating, all that stuff, all those courses are there. And there's a ton of free videos on each one of them that will just give you all the information that you want to know to make a decision about what kind of career you would want to start. So today we have another guest on. We're going to continue the interview format here with Ryan from Ryan Anthony's Heating and Air Conditioning up in Long Island. And this is going to be interesting because Ryan started very young. He started his company much earlier than most people do, but now he owns several companies in several different niches. And this is just everything that I preach about, and even more important than that, he has a nonprofit that people should be aware of, especially up in the Long Island area. So, Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. How's it going? Good to be on. Thanks for having me.
And if people don't know, my real name is also Ryan, but I go by Ike because my last name is Eisenhower and the president. So Ryan Anthony's Heating and Air Conditioning. What is that company? What's your niche? And how'd you get started?
So that company, the niches were basically 99% residential. So we do service contracts, yearly maintenances, a lot of boiler installations, a lot of air conditioning installations. We don't do a lot of new construction stuff. Most of our stuff is, retrofitting what's already there. Gas conversions, things like that. At one point, and I'll get onto it later, we were subcontracting for probably 15 other companies here in Long Island. That's really what helped jump my business. But it also hurt a little bit too. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But it's 19 years next month. I think it was like August 19th or somewhere around there that we incorporated. I was 21 years old. I'm 40 now. I'll be 41 in September. And, here we are right now. But before I got into my own business, I obviously worked for another company. My father has an oil delivery business that he's had for close to 30 years now. He was a truck driver for Entenmann's. Everyone probably knows what Entenmann's is.
It's like the strudels, like the strudels, the pastries.
So it was funny because my dad drove the tractor trailers, and then my godfather, my Uncle Kenny, drove the small trucks. So my dad would get like different things. Like I always tell, do you ever know what boboli was? It was like that dough you can make pizza with. I don't know, but we had so much boboli as a kid because, we didn't have a lot of money. We had it like every possible way you could imagine. So if I sold boboli right now, I would wing it like across the room because I'm all bobolied out. But that was one of the things he would pick up. And my uncle, we always had Entenmann's cookies in the house and banana cake and whatever else. Entenmann's started going downhill, and my dad always worked a lot. And on Saturdays, he worked for this company, Bayview Heating Oil, and he would deliver oil for years. And before that, he worked for another company. So his whole career, he basically delivered oil on the side. So he saw Entenmann's was kind of going downhill, and he decided to start his own oil delivery business. Mind you, I'm a twin brother. I have a twin brother and a younger brother. So he's got 3 boys at home. There was like a massive pay cut when Entenmann's. So he kind of like was forced to get into his own company, and he did. And it was, he was working nights, for the company, for Entenmann's, and then days delivering oil. And he did that for many years until Entenmann's basically called him in and I think he called in sick one day and they ended up terminating my dad. And, you know, it was a tough time, but he had the connection at Bayview Heating Oil because that's where he kept the truck. That's where he used to deliver oil. And Bayview Heating Oil needed a technician when I was like 18, 19 years old. And that's what gave me the opportunity to get into this industry.
You're talking about residential deliveries, like to people's houses and stuff like that.
Residential oil deliveries, yep. So my dad, he only delivered oil. He didn't do any of the servicing or anything like that.
So it's funny because my wife is from Pennsylvania, and there are houses there that have oil. But there are, what I didn't know, because I grew up in Boston, right? Like totally normal thing, Long Island, Boston, for people to have oil and you know, oil tanks in their house and to have that, you know, as a means of heat for your home. Not common in many parts of the country. So basically, so people know, you have literally like a milk delivery, or like when Amazon comes to your house, just imagine a big oil tank, somebody rolling out a hose and literally filling up your oil tank so that you can heat your home in the winter. So you were that tech. You were not doing the delivery yourself. Your father was, but you started getting hands-on experience. What was your job actually? Like if you weren't actually just delivering oil, what were you doing?
So he had two ends of the company. It was a full service company, which meant if you bought oil from this particular company, you got free service. So if you had a problem, the service was included. So he needed servicemen to, you know, fit that need. So basically what we did was, you know, we were doing yearly maintenances on, you know, customers' equipment. When I first got into the business, there was a lot of people who are listening that know the industry. There was probably a dozen or more different burner manufacturers. Now the burner is what creates the flame inside of a boiler or a furnace. So when I learned service, you had to carry a lot of extra parts. We would change transformers, and the transformers, you'd have your transformer, then you'd have a plate. The plate would have to match the burner because each manufacturer had their own size plate, and then they had different models of different burners. So it was a lot more involved, I think, when I first got into the trade as compared to now. Now there's like maybe 3 major players. There's Beckett, Carlin, and Riello. You know, so it's a lot easier, I think, than when I first got into it. But yeah, basically maintenance, that's where I started to learn. And then they would start sending me on service calls. My biggest thing is my boss, when he hired me at $10 an hour. And he said, now, yes, that was 20 something years ago, but he said, I'll bump you up to $16 an hour as soon as you can get in your own truck and provide a customer service call. So I was in my own truck in 3 months. So that's like my claim to fame, because
it's amazing. It's amazing when you get that carrot dangled in front of you, a little $6 an hour at that age. Back in, we're saying maybe like 2003, 2004.
2004, yeah.
So tell me what it was like. You know, you grew up obviously blue collar family, right? I mean, truck drivers and oil delivery guys and things like that. And I mean, you grew up in Long Island, right? So it's not like a relative middle class to up affluent area, right? Like, you know, you probably had a lot of people your age.
There are expensive areas in Long Island, but we were, you know, West Babylon is very blue collar, middle class. You know, 3-bedroom house with, you know, I shared it with my brother till I was 19. You know, 1 bathroom, 1 shower, 1.5 bathrooms in the house, 1 shower, you know, so, but you know, it's that I feel like when you grow up that way, it gives you more of an incentive to want to excel further. And, you know, that's one of the things I'm sure we'll get to, with my wife, how we raised my son and my daughter. Like, granted, now we do very well, but I don't want, you know, to give too much. And I don't know if you have kids, but that's always a constant conversation with us is, you know, I truly believe that growth happens when you struggle a little bit. And I think that too many parents nowadays don't let their kids struggle, and you're doing them a huge disservice by not letting them struggle.
Listen, I agree 100%. And it's funny because I started my career around the same time as you. I'm a couple years younger than you, but I got into the HVAC world, you know, relatively early, and roofing. And I think I started at $8 an hour around the same year as you. So you had me beat.
Were you working for family?
No. Family, friends, and residential roofing.
Okay.
And then I was working as unloading sheet metal off of trucks and, you know, loading sheet metal trucks and stuff like that, and cleaning up a sheet metal and pipe shop outside of Boston. But tell me what it was like, because that was me, and I was doing that in high school, and I was definitely working a little harder and more than all my friends. So if anything, people just looked at me like, why are you doing that? We should be like having fun. But you were a little bit older, right? And a lot of your friends were probably going to college, especially in a middle class with all the neighboring towns being, either middle class or affluent. How did you
Right.
feel about that? Like, did you feel like people thought that they were better than you? Did you feel
Oh,
like other parents like bragging about what their kids were doing as opposed to, you
yeah.
being an oil tech?
And it still happens today. Maybe it'll happen a little less from, what you're trying to achieve. And same thing here, where I'm doing up here. But, the hardest thing was I have a twin brother. He has got blonde hair, blue eyes. We look nothing alike. But he was always very academic. He was in all the accelerator programs. He was taking college courses in high school. And then here I am struggling to make it big. So school came hard to me because, I always say this quote. I said, if you judge an elephant by its ability to climb a tree, the elephant will forever think it's stupid. It's Albert Einstein quote. I wasn't meant for school. I wasn't meant for that portion of school. Like, I can learn, but I need to learn in a certain way. So, going to the barbecues and going to graduations and whose kids going where and what. And then I didn't know, I went to 2 years at Farmingdale, which is a SUNY college over here. And it's because my parents forced me. But I didn't apply to the college till like a week or two before I had to start because I didn't want to go. And I can remember vividly my cousin who was younger than me, who was also smart, and he was going to school to be an architect. I don't think he ever got the degree though, but he made a comment like, "Oh, you're going to the 13th grade." And I remember feeling such, so shitty about that. And, I find it to be, it was really hard to hear something like that, and that's something that, this is many years ago. And I still remember vividly, like I was at my Uncle Johnny's for a backyard barbecue and he said that to me. But that's also part of the many things that I was told or heard that fueled me to prove everyone wrong. So, it's like a blessing and a curse, right?
And how many companies do your brother and your cousin own combined?
None.
Okay, and you got three, so that's
Yeah.
funny. And
Yeah.
what's funny is obviously I encourage people to get into construction however they get in, but I'm
Right.
always honest with people, and I've spoken at events, and people get angry at me for admitting this. Architects do not make a lot of money. Most architects do not make a lot of money, and I
Right.
think it's one of the cruel realizations that a lot of college graduates like. It sounds good because
Yeah.
it's like this educated thing, and you hear it in the movies and the people that own the big companies, yeah, they do really well. But
Right.
when it comes to construction, the level of pay that you get at the end of your education is at the bottom. And it's even lower than most, if not all trades. Like you could be a local 79 laborer in Manhattan and you make 2 to 3 times what a architectural graduate will make.
Right.
So it's just funny because I just tell young people, it's like, don't be concerned about the conversation at the backyard barbecue.
Right.
Because that becomes a distant memory so fast. And when then you hit 23 and 28 and 33, and
Yeah.
those conversations, especially when you're dating and you're single and you're out there, and like all of a sudden you get older, and all of a sudden the amount of money that you make really matters,
Right.
as opposed to
Right.
like what you're going to college for.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's okay. It's you shouldn't feel that way. Number one, it's okay and understandable why you feel that way, but just wait, just make the right decision
Yeah.
with 10 and 20 years, down the road in mind. And it's going to lead to three, and we're about to talk about it, but three totally different businesses that you own now in different, all different trades. And you're the entrepreneur and the business owner.
Yeah. They all have their own growing pains. That growing pain never goes away. With our nonprofit, we mentor, there's probably 200 kids signed up. We don't get 200 kids at every monthly meeting, but, we mentor a lot of kids. And, I find that if we give these kids in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, there's some kids in their 20s, like the whole truth about what to expect, they're more ready to experience that experience and they're not so shocked and deterred. So, I just feel like that's in every case of your life, you should be upfront about everything. So, when we talk to these kids, we explain like, this was my story, and that's where we started, because I feel there's a lot of kids that were in my position who they're not stupid kids. They're not designed to go to college, or maybe they're designed to go work somewhere, find out if it's something that they really like and they want to go to college for, and then know why they're going to college. Like, I really think there should be some sort of delay between high school to college to get kids some experience and really figure out what they want to do, and not get sold a bag of goods, because at the end of the day, college is a business, and so is trade schools. No one talks about that, but I get people calling me all the time to try to get me to refer kids that I mentor to their entrepreneurship programs or their electrical division programs or all these things, but it all costs money. So, there's a lot of money to be made off of kids in that 18, 19-year-old range.
I call it the education industrial complex. My namesake, Dwight David Eisenhower, 34th president, talked about the military industrial complex. And there's definitely an education industrial complex, whether it's trades or whether it's college. I got a degree in mechanical engineering. I told you before we started, my intent was to live in the HVAC subcontractor world. And I thought mechanical engineering, well, college engineering, that's smart. My dad's trucks say mechanical on the side of it. Clearly that means something. So that's quite literally why I got a mechanical engineering degree. And then you go, and what people don't tell you is that 50% of your courses are things you already are general education, many of which you already should have learned in high school, like English 1 and biology and chemistry, totally irrelevant to HVAC. And then even the stuff that is relevant, not all of it is actually practical, right? So what's an example? Calculus 4. You own an HVAC company for, for 20 years. How many times have you used Calculus 4? You don't, nor did the people that designed anything that you use. So it's like
times width times height, maybe.
Which is like 7th grade. So it's like, it's just so funny because it is a business. And even in trade school, I'm sure, and I didn't go to trade school, but you and I were also talking about how I got all these code books right here. I got 25 code books that I have to study now. And I got, and they're 45 pounds. I know that because the box is right here and it says it. But I got to go to these exams to get this license that I want. And I have my mechanical contractor's license, but I would call you to fix the AC because all the information that I had to learn just to pass that test, none of it's actually applicable in the field, like 99% of the time.
Well, I always say this, and I'm sure you feel the same way because you touch a lot of different industries, but I never met a business owner who's had this experience. But for 19 years now, I've had people come through those doors to come work here. And I've had a lot of people who went to trade school and have a certificate. I've never gotten to have someone come in through the doors without any experience, have all their training, and then say, here's the keys to my truck, go make me money. It's never happened. And I don't think it will ever happen because you can go to school, but until you get that experience, you can't fix anything. You could have the idea or mindset to fix it, but you need guidance through those, how to deal with customers, how to diagnose problems, different things that you're going to see, that you're going to look for, that you're not going to focus so much on stuff that you're not going to need to fix. That all comes with experience. And, I feel like experience is the education. You could read as many books as you want, but if you don't get experience, what can you do?
There is no diploma or a certificate or anything that will replace mentorship. That's why I call this the Construction Mentor Podcast. The word mentorship is so important to me. And I've got 2 degrees and I've got licenses and I've got all these things. But the most important thing that I've ever had in my life, number one, is the 21 years of experience that I've got now. But the mentors along the way, because that 21 years leveraged through those people is as good as 100 years, because I was learning through them and they had 40 years in when they were teaching me, and they told me where to look.
To approach those guys. That's right. That's one of the things we focus on too, because a lot of these old time, I'm becoming like the older guy in the industry. The old timers are all either dying or retiring or, hanging it up. So it's like, all right, now it's like really concerning because who's going to teach all these kids if all these guys are leaving? So it's a responsibility on our end now. Now we're in that I'm 40 years old. So it's like, I have to run with the torch for the next 20 years. And then hopefully in 20 years, there'll be someone for me to pass the torch to.
Right.
And then go from there.
So tell me, it's very interesting that we just talked about that, because the next thing that I wanted to ask you about was how'd you get the balls to start your own company at 21? I think I would always advise people, get more experience, get more education, maybe
Right.
23, 24, 25, get like 5 to 7 years in before you start a business. But you
Right.
did it early.
Yeah.
And hey man, if you got the balls to do it and you got the drive to do it, then go for it. But
Absolutely.
what made you feel confident in making that jump?
So within the 3 months I told you I was in my own service truck, I really excelled at problem solving. I was always a very good problem solver, and I was always a Lego guy or Lincoln Logs. Like I was always building. That's just how I grew up. Um, so when I went to a customer's house, I was problem solving, but I was using not only my hands, I was using my brain. Because prior to this, I told you as well, I used to hang sheetrock and do trim work, which that's bull work. Sheetrock, that kind of work, it's bull work. And, I worked with, my now partner when I was 16, and I met them that many years ago. And I did that for, the couple of years I was in college. And then when I left there, or the 2 years, I had a late birthday. That's when I went to Bayview.
Ryan, I just want to like point out what you just said. One of the most common things that I get in my comment section is like, duh, the average trade person makes, $20 an hour or whatever it is. And it's like, okay.
No.
Just like every college degree doesn't make the same amount of money after, just like an English major won't make the same as a doctor, that somebody that goes to school to become a neurosurgeon.
Right.
Not all trades are created equal. Somebody with a broom in
their
their
hand.
hand.
Person's house today, by the way, not to cut you off.
But so like,
there's 3 houses. Yeah.
Somebody that knows how to install or fix or retrofit an HVAC system is much different skill set and a much smarter skill set required than hanging drywall. You can learn drywall, you can become an expert, you can learn different types of carpentry, and you sure as hell can become an entrepreneur hanging drywall. Absolutely. There is no glass ceiling, but for the most part, people that hang drywall make probably half of what people make installing HVAC.
Yeah, because you can learn how to hang drywall. I mean, granted, you need your experience. I'm not going to put down the carpenter as my partner. He's a lot bigger than me. He'll kill me. But, that's a position where, like, and he'll admit it, you could bring guys in that are friends of yours for the day just to help you hang sheetrock and make sure the screws hit the studs. Whereas our business, it's a little different. Like, you need the knowledge and experience. And, too many kids give up, or they don't put the extra time in. Or what I find, and I'm sure you've talked about this, is there's a lot of bad attitudes out there too. And whether they're guys in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And a lot of times the guys that have basically been spinning their wheels for 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years in an industry hate the industry because they never took any risk, now are infecting these young, motivated minds. So I try to bring that to these kids' attentions too, that, be careful who you listen to, because if you're going to listen to anybody, you're going to listen to people that you want to be like. And if that's not someone you want to be like, then you should not be listening to them. And I've seen a lot of, even in my own company, I've seen a lot of kids come in and develop piss poor attitudes, all because of who I stuck them with in the truck. And, it takes a long time to figure out how to cut cancer out of your company. But that's one of the things you learn as you are a business owner. It's one of the hardest things, but it's tough.
That was like, I think my first episode, why mentorship is so hard in the construction industry and why so many companies fail, even though they try to put a system in place, which is really what they just stick young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed person with crusty old, person in the field with all the experience. But that doesn't mean that one wants to learn and one wants to teach. And it's not going to be a match made in heaven. Nobody's going to learn through osmosis. But what you just said is the most valuable thing out of this entire episode. Whatever we talk about, that is the biggest piece of advice that I could ever give anybody that you talk to. It's like a stack of $100 bills on a table, right? Even people that you want to be like, some of those dollar bills are going to be counterfeit. You got to pull those out and you got to take the good value. And that's a skill set that you learn over time and you learn with experience, and you kind of see things with your own eyes, but especially with the salty people, or how they talk to clients, or, how they coordinate with other trades and how nice they play in the sandbox with people. You got to be careful of all those things, because there's a lot of bad habits and there's a lot of sour apples, and there's no reason for you to get sour. So that 100% definitely agree. So now that you were 21 and you started your own business, how'd you start getting customers, and what was growth like? Like, what were the hard lessons that you learned as a young entrepreneur?
So prior to me actually incorporating the company, and the guy I work for knew this because my whole intention was to learn from him and then, go do my own thing. He just didn't think it was going to happen so fast. But he didn't really treat me the best either. He took a little bit of advantage, but it's all right. I started doing side work. So I would work, 6 days a week. So and this is another thing kids don't understand. My only day off was Thursday. So I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and my day off was Thursday all year long. That was how my schedule was. I worked 6 days a week. Saturday, Sunday, you were more on call, but I couldn't go anywhere. I remember hanging out at my friend's house in my work clothes smelling like an oil burner, and they make fun of me for it, but whatever. So, when I would leave work, most of the time I got home at like 5 o'clock. In the winter when it was cold, I'd get home later, 6, 7 o'clock, but I had a gray E350 and I would bring that to my job. And at night I would park the vans together and I would basically unload my tools from one truck to the other. And I already had my own truck with my own inventory. I just needed my tool sets. And then I would go do night calls, because people would call me throughout the day and maybe I had 2 calls after work. I go hit the 2 calls, work until I was done and then go home and do it again. And, that's what grew the business. And then after I would say 6 to 8 months of doing that is when I realized like, hey, you know what? I could probably make as much, if not more than what I'm making right now working for myself. Granted, it's a huge risk, but I'm 21. At the time I still lived home. I said, I only have X amount of bills. It's going to be easier for me to take the risk now than to take the risk later on when maybe I have a family or, a house or other bills. So that was part of the jump for me. And then, I also knew that the company I worked for, they only really focused on oil burner service and we rarely did boiler installations. So I was at my peak of learning at that company. But working for that company, I made friends with guys in the supply house because we would go to the supply house and I would see guys and I would pick different people's brains and I would talk to different people about other people. Like that guy, he seems like, is he a good mechanic? And, the counter guy would talk to you. So when I left, I wasn't busy every day doing what I was doing. So the days I was slow, I would go work with other plumbers and other boiler mechanics and other HVAC guys and learn more of a craft to bring to my own company. So I would basically go work with them in the mornings. And then by like 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, depending on the job, I'd go out and do my own service calls.
So were you getting paid for that or were you just seeing at the supply house? Okay.
No, I was getting paid. Granted, there were a few guys who stiffed me, years ago, or, I'll pay you next week kind of deal that I never burn a bridge with them. But, I probably should have been making more, but I'm a young kid and I'm happy just to learn at that time. So.
It's so funny because I tell people all the time that even the people that want to get in construction, they're so, I want to build skyscrapers. I want to build football stadiums. I want to build, the big sexy stuff. And the people that do those jobs look down on the people that do commercial interiors, and those big commercial people look down on people that do residential, and some of the people that do new residential or developments or, homes from soup to nuts. They kind of look down on the subs that do the service. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You make just as much money and the risk is lower actually. And the profit margins are higher. So you don't need to do as much work to make as much money. I have a friend who owns an HVAC company, or he works for an HVAC company, commercial, and he started doing work on the side, just like you did, just like 99 out of 100 people that I've had on the podcast started their businesses. It started with side work. Yeah. And does he, with the side work that he was doing, did he need to know how to do absolutely everything in HVAC? No. The service that he was offering was changing filters, cleaning coils, tighten up electrical connections, checking for mold, and blowing out condensate lines. And he had people lining up to sign up for that service biannually. And now, then he starts doing rooftop replacements, and then he starts changing out units and doing ductless mini splits on garages. And you just start stacking up those skills. You get a base, especially on a service call, because everyone's always going to need heating and air conditioning. It doesn't matter what the economy is doing.
Out of your comfort zone, right?
And then just one service at a time, you start adding that and stacking that skill set.
Right.
And, look where you are now. So fast forward, like from 21-year-old you to 40-year-old you, other than the gray hair, what else did you pick up? How big has the operation gone?
Well, really the operation, it was me for the first probably nine years of the business. Like I would always try to get, more guys to kind of see my vision and like team up with me. And, for one point I had a kid with me for like 2.5 years, and he finally got to the point where I could send him out on his own. And he was like, I don't want to be on call. He wanted to coach wrestling, and, he's like, this really isn't for me. I wasn't expecting to be here so long, so whatever. But, he left. And then, what had happened was when I was 29, it was September 17th, right before heating season. That's really when heating season's starting. I was taking a boiler out of a house on Catskill Avenue in Lindenhurst. Joe Barone's house, I still remember. She's still a customer. And it was an Arco liner boiler. And I said 1, 2, 3 to pull the boiler out. And I don't think any of my guys that were with me that day lifted. And I ended up getting an umbilical hernia that day. So I ended up working the rest of the day, and I didn't realize I had the hernia until I got home. I was thinner then. I felt my stomach, and I had I knew right away what it was because I always weight trained. I was always fearful of getting an umbilical hernia. And I went and made an appointment with the doctor. I saw the doctor. The doctor says, you got to get the surgery right away. He's like, because the way your hernia is, it's entangled. It's painful. You could potentially die from a hernia that's strangulated. So
Wow.
I ended up getting the surgery September 30th. Now at this time I'm on my own. I bought a house when I was 26. I basically moved, my whole operation was working out of my house at a detached 2-car garage. And, that was the eye-opening experience to me, because you're supposed to take like 4 weeks off from hernia surgery. I took 4 days off. You know, any of the heavy lifting I had after those 4 days, I did have some other plumbers that would help me. For maybe the first week and a half, I didn't really carry the too big, but I had a helper that would help me. Because I knew that if I didn't get to my customers during that time of year, there's a good probable chance that they're going to call someone else, and they may like that person and stick with them because I'm not reliable.
Sure.
So that was the eye opener. So basically I started working from then on out to start getting more, higher caliber guys to work for me. And we were, and then I want to say October the next year, that was 2014, I met my now wife. And, that's when I met her. I was working out of my house, but the neighbors complained that I was getting deliveries to the house. So I had to basically move my operation out of my house and actually get a legitimate business address. So that's what we did. And then once I got, that location, then I really was feet to the ground trying to get people. But the biggest thing is you have to outlay money beforehand to get someone of good quality. And I think that took me a long time to realize, because I was always afraid of doing that. And, you also have to offer them health insurance, which is also a big expense. So I ended up getting, a guy, that actually just recently left. He went on to, doing something else. And, but he was with me for 10 years, and, hired him. And that was like my first building block of having like a good high caliber technician that I could build a company around. And that's how it went. So we moved into a 2,000 square foot facility. I had a warehouse in the back, small office. And, not long after that, I started getting phone calls from different companies about subcontracting. And that's a whole world that I never really knew about. And, that's where I started really building and,
Subcontracting for installs.
Yeah. I was doing, a lot of boilers, a lot of HVAC, and, it's Long Island, small island. So, most of these companies are owned by one big company now, but, this one company, Romanelli and Son, Maury Romanelli called me, and that's where I originally started with subcontracting, then Hart Petroleum, then Sweezy Fuel, then Parkside Fuel, then Manor, Lewis, Rockland Charter, Perillo, General Fuel. They're all calling me to do installations. So for me to meet the need, I had to buy more trucks and hire more guys. So from 2014 to 2017, I probably went to like 1.1 million in debt.
Really,
And,
just to lay out payroll.
well, I leveraged auto dealerships. I bought I think we were up to like 10 trucks. I went from like 2 trucks to 10 trucks in 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I had 4-box trucks running, those were 65,000 a pop back then. Now that who knows what they are now. Transits,
So was everybody reporting to you, or did you
yeah, I
have
was
some kind of a
running.
hierarchy where it was like two kind of chiefs or senior guys that were managing the people under them? Or
How it started was I would basically, when we started subcontracting, is I would get a crew to the job, start them on the job, have them set up with it to piping, and I would pre-build the boilers because that would save me time on the job. And then I would leave and I would go do service calls, and then I would eventually get back to the office, do my estimates, and follow up everybody. Then I started hiring more people. I hired a manager that I was paying a lot of money, and he was with me for two or maybe 4 years, maybe 5 years, I forget. But it turned out, you that's another thing I talk about. People, make sure when you hire someone, you have some set of expectations, and those expectations have to be met every day. Not like, all right, well, I'm going to work hard Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and then Wednesday, Friday, I'm just going to hang out at the office. So a lot of that started happening as we were growing, and things were getting kind of messed up. And what had happened was, I was making money. I was making payroll every week and everything was good. But I got an audit from New York State Insurance Fund for workman's compensation. It was like 50 grand or $46,000, something like that. And I wasn't paying the weekly fees to the comp. So after I factored that money in and I sat in my account, and I'm like, he's like, this is great. You're buying trucks. You have 20 guys working for you, but you're not making any money. In fact, you're losing money. So I had to like bob and weave. And that's when I went to marketing on social media. Wow. And that was in 2017, 2018, right around that.
wow. So to grow, you had some assets that you probably weren't going into a huge amount of debt for, but then it sounds like you leveraged those assets to grow, to do payroll, more trucks, more assets, whatever you needed. Yeah. And then, because that's a big question that a lot of people have, like, do I have to go into debt? What kind of money do I need? How do I get an SBA loan? All those things. And then you got smart, and then you realized that you had some inefficiencies internally, but then externally, you could have been more attractive to maybe get better clients or higher volume. Is that what the marketing investment was?
Yeah. Well, instead of doing work at sub pay, I could market directly to the consumer and make the sub pay plus the markup. And that's where you really need to be to make money. And that takes a long time to figure out as well. Cause you can make money when it's you and 1 or 2 guys, but once you start getting a company and having payroll, and, we have retirement packages now and whatever else, there's a number that you have to hit every day. And if you don't hit it, you could be out of business. So you have to make sure the numbers are right. But as far as leverage goes, just so people have like the insight on how am I talking about is, I think 600,000 of that was truck loans, 5 and change just truck loans. I ended up getting like, up to $300,000 in line of credit that I got before I actually needed the money, if you have a business, you need to go get a line of credit. Even if you don't need it, you should probably at least have it there. So when you do need it, it's there.
Just in case, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And suddenly you get a $50,000 bill.
Exactly. And then, make close relationships with your suppliers. So Blackman, which is a big supplier here in Long Island, sold to Ferguson, right? In 2020, they sold. But in 2015, 16, around that time, there was a man who owned an oil company who I knew because I would go to different, events. They take us hunting or, to dinner or whatever else. And, he came into my office and he said, I just was talking to, Bob, who owns Blackman at the time, about you the other day. And I was explaining to him how you're the guy doing all these installs for all these companies. And, we would like to invest in you. And I didn't know what he meant. And he's like, well, what I mean is, you're spending, $200,000 to $300,000 a year in material from us. If we help maybe give you a line of credit through us, maybe it'll help you grow. And in turn, you keep the business with us. And that's what we did. And at first, I think they gave me like a $50,000 line. Then they let me stretch it to 100 to 150. It got up to like 250,000. But I went from spending $300,000 a year to $1 million a year with them. So it was beneficial for them too. So that's a relationship that I never would have really figured it out unless, he kind of came to me with it. So leveraging is important. It 100% is. It's scary, but if you have a good vision and you basically say that this is going to work, I'm going to make this work no matter what. Take the jump. I say, jump and grow your wings on the way down. That's kind of how, it started getting better for me when I developed that mindset.
Yeah. So, I mean, and getting a line of credit, I mean, it's almost like a casino that wants to keep you there, right? Like they'll keep it so that you're there.
Yeah.
Obviously that's, gambling is totally different than running a business, but
Right.
if you're trying to make payroll and you're trying to make sure that cash is flowing, you don't want to overextend yourself with taking on new clients and having to buy equipment for them and then waiting for the install and then waiting for the cash flow from that. So it just kind of alleviates that pressure and allows you to take on more because you don't have to necessarily pay the bill for the equipment like right away. But you do have to pay payroll right away because people have bills to pay and food to put on the table and all those things. So that's amazing that you were able to do that. And you hit the nail on the head. I think where I see people fail when they come in the construction industry, especially in the GCs, they beat up the subs and, they talk down to vendors. The personal relationship that you can get, I mean, those are your dominoes. You can't set up a game of dominoes if you don't have any dominoes to set up. So your supply chain, the better relationships that you have there, it's going to maybe open up lines of credit for you. It may just be as simple as something's back ordered and a good relationship for you is going to put you at the front of the line to get the next one that's available or a lead time that you need for a schedule.
And still to this day, that literally just happened an hour ago.
See, and or here's what happens that nobody ever wants to admit. Hey, I fucked this up. Can you please help me? Right? Like,
what can you do for me? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how can you save me? Those are the phone calls that can make or break a career or a project, especially if you get into the bigger stuff.
Possess what you just said is being able to make that call and be like, I fucked up. Help me.
Right. And it happens. Everybody does it.
Yeah. So many people don't do that, make that phone call. They just try to avoid it. And all that avoidance is doing is pissing everyone off, where it's like, all right, I messed up. I'm going to just go at this right now. And then that's it. And what can I do after that?
So tell me, I want to talk about, because we're coming up on time, but I want to talk about these other two businesses that you got, because it didn't just stop at HVAC. And it's funny because it's like, again, other people, you come up, they're going to college, they're doing all these fancy things and getting these expensive pieces of paper. Yet you in the trades, you've been able to get involved in three separate businesses. And then of course, I want to talk about the nonprofit and how you're bringing that mentorship that we talked about that was so important to other people. So first step, what are the two other businesses that you're involved in?
Right. So we started Long Island Building and Contracting Consultants in 2020. And I started that. And once again, this goes back to relationships. I started that with the same guy that I used to hang sheetrock and do trim work when I was 16. So he continued down his path to being he became a master carpenter. He's like an older brother to me. He's 6 years older than me. Never lets me forget that either. So he continued on that path, and I went to him in 2019 because we remained close. And I said, right when I was stopping subcontracting for the heating and air conditioning, I said, you know what? I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want to work for any contractor because there's always a song and a dance. And like you said, they beat up on the subs on every job. I said, why don't we be the GC? I said, between my mechanical background and your carpentry skills and all your connections with flooring and tile and everything else, we don't need anybody else. We could basically have our own company under the two of us. So that's what we did. And then I have a probably 6,000 account customer base that all need bathrooms and all need kitchens and all need basements refinished and dormers and whatever else. And that's what we started. So that's going well now.
Yeah, it's funny. So I haven't touched on this a lot, but it's an important concept, especially somebody that's been around for, 21 years and people can challenge my experience and the number compared to my age. But as I've come up, whether even when I was a teenager in the mechanical shop, other people come up, other people grow up. The project managers that I worked for when I was beginning are now vice presidents and senior vice presidents in some high places. I've come up while other people have come up on the client side. Even people that I used to work with in my own office now are some of my biggest clients, right? So when you're talking about building that network and cultivating relationships and leveraging those relationships, don't burn bridges, build very strong bridges, because you never know when somebody's going to come back in your life and what that opportunity is going to bring to you. Maybe it's a partnership in a business. Maybe it's your most valued client. You never know. So what's the third business? How'd you get the third one?
So the third one I completely fell into, and I tell people all the time, like, I'm not a know-it-all, and I know my limits. So, but I know how to operate business. So, like, once you develop that skill, which is a very hard skill to develop, you can really operate any business as long as you have the right people around you. And that's the other thing. Like, you can't basically say, you're the best at everything. No, you got to have people that are smarter than you in areas you're not. And I learned that young, and it's been very good to me. But when I moved into the first building, once again, it was an expandable building. The guys next door were commercial glaziers. They don't, the one, Ray has, 2 kids, 2 daughters, obviously not getting in the glass business. And Rich had a stepdaughter who obviously is not getting into the glass business. So we became just friendly. It was never a discussion when we first met each other. They would just come over for coffee. And after a while, they'd be at my office, walking over 3, 4, 5 times a day for coffee. And they were intrigued and, because they saw me grow. And I could imagine, like they say all the time, you're a maniac. Like, I went from pulling up with 2, 3 trucks or a truck and a trailer to 10 trucks, and then guys coming and guys going. So they wanted to hear the gossip all the time of what job got messed up or what job went good or what kid called in sick or what kid fought.
Listen, that banter doesn't go, like, the desire for that. There's a lot of guys that I know, laborers in Manhattan, that stay on in their 70s just for that, just for the cigarette at the loading dock, or the diner breakfast on a Saturday with the guys, or they'll do their 39 and a half hours so they get to keep their retirement. Like, it's not for the money. It's for the camaraderie.
Absolutely. So, as we grew, like I said, we took over another 2,000 square feet. We took over so we had 8,000 square feet. So they ended up moving in with us into one of the parcels, because I didn't need all 8,000 square feet. I needed for the parking in the back. So we became very close. And that's when the discussion started of, hey, 5-year plan, we're going to want to retire. We don't want to close the door here. We'd like you to take over the business with one of our workers, one of the guys that was installing for them. And what happened was the guy that was installing for them ended up, not doing the right thing, not putting any extra time, wasted a huge opportunity because he didn't want to stay late and learn how to do stuff on the computer, which is crazy. And, that turned into all right, Ryan's going to take it over. And in the interim of that, we ended up having a fire in the building. And it was I won't go into too much detail, but it was a major thing for us. And my landlord turned out to be a real asshole. And, we went from renting from May 5th, 2021 to being building owners, July 21st, 2021. And that's its own story in of itself. I could tell you another time, but the part of the deal, me buying the building, was I said, you guys are with me now. You guys got to come with me to the building. And then, they did. And then the conversation excelled more of me going into their business. And then it finally got to a point where they really wanted to make a move. And at the time, they were subcontracting all their labor to another company in a couple towns over from us. And the guys they were subcontracting, we went to dinner with, we were all friends, good people, father and son company. And, I said to them, I said, I can't run the glass business by myself because I don't know enough about it. I know my limits. I said, but if you think about it, if tomorrow those guys said that they're not doing your work anymore,
you got nothing.
You guys are fucked. So I said, why don't we bring them in as partner? I'll be partner. You guys be partner until you're ready to retire. And then we'll all run it together. Everyone has skin in the game and everyone has a goal to grow the company. And that's what we did. But what happened with that now is because of, once again, relationships. I have years, 20 something year relationships with certain people that were never able to offer me any sort of business or any sort of work at their job because I was all residential, that live in the construction realm, that now, we grew that business to like $2 million in a year just because of the relationships that I already had cultivated from 20 years ago or 10 years ago.
Right.
So that's why I would say it's important to have these relationships. People do business with people that they like. It's really not much harder than that, So
it's really that simple.
Don't be an asshole. Do what you say. Show up when you're supposed to. Own your mistakes, and you have a business.
And pick up the phone, call people in person. And what I love what you said, you were humble enough to say, like, I don't know enough to run the business. I know how to run a business. I don't know how to run that business because I don't know it in the field. And this is a thing that's happening all over the country. There are tens of thousands of contracting companies that are successful that could be bought because they don't have anybody to pass it on to. Their kids don't want it, or they don't have kids, or whatever. And if you are young and you want to be an entrepreneur and you can just stick to doing some hard work and learning a trade for 3, 4, 5 years, and you can position yourself to, and I have friends that are doing this now. They're buying the company like on a progression plan. Like every year they get more stake in the company and they pay into it. And, at the end of 5 years, I have a buddy that's going to own a generator company. Right. And I don't think that there's a better opportunity. Like, forget about being Ryan Heating and having a 20-year, saga of how you had to build that company. There are much more opportunities today to work for somebody for 5 years and then buy the company from them on an SBA loan, or doing like a buyback deal from the owner, and like a where the owner gets paid back, for all their, equity and whatever they want to make from selling the company. But there's so many options for financing. The key is that you either get the right partner or the right experience to buy that company.
Right. And to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, buying a business is going to be cheaper.
Tell me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying buying a business now looking back would be cheaper. If you go buy a business that already has all the groundwork done and laid out and systems in place, it may sound expensive to buy something like that, but it's not, because the amount of money you're going to spend and risk to build to get to that point, it's going to be more, and years off your life, really, right? All the stress and aggravation.
And a client list, and the best kind of client list you can have is a service client, a client that needs you annually, biannually, has a record of, different projects that you've done for them in the past. And listen, at the biggest scale, I told you before we started, I work at one of the biggest GCs in the country, $12 billion a year, 4,500 employees.
Wow.
We're focused right now, my group, on a pseudo national service division, because it's something that nobody's paying. The big teams, or the big contractors, are not paying attention to. And it's our clients, and my clients are the Fortune 500 companies, Meta, Google, Apple, all those companies. That's their biggest pain point, because it's really hard for them to manage. So the point being is that service is a great way to be sticky with clients, to have a client list, and there's extreme value in that. And it takes a lot of hard work to build that up.
Right.
So
can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Because one more thing that I want to stress too, and I'm sure you do the same, is I never really met a successful business person that solely only did one business and became very, very, very successful. 9 times out of 10, or basically 10 out of 10 from what my experience is, anyone I meet of any success either has multiple businesses or invested in 5 to 10 different things, whether it be real estate or stocks or whatever. So I tell a lot of these young kids that start investing now, because that investment maybe come back to you by the time you're 40 and you could enjoy that money. So you have to basically make your money and then put your money to work, essentially. And if kids learn that at a younger age, I think things would be a lot better for everybody too.
And to not go into college debt. It's not even just about necessarily going into college debt, because a lot of people say, oh, scholarships, grants, not taking a loan, just paying it. Well, you're also not working and making money for 4 years. You're not getting experience for 4 years. There's a huge opportunity cost where you could have a couple $10,000 on the bank and be invested. And instead of not being able to have that kind of money for 10 years after graduation because you are paying for a loan, or maybe it's just 5 years because you didn't make any money while you were in school, well, that 10 years invested, or that 10 grand, maybe say you saved up 10 grand invested over 20 full years to the time you're 40, is worth a lot more than 10 grand. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Right. Like I just had one investment account I just looked at. I only paid into it 2 grand, and from 2021 to 2022, and it's already worth 10 grand. So like, what's wrong with that? So if I just extrapolate 2 grand times, but over 20 years instead of just over the last 4,
right.
There's a huge opportunity cost there. And it's really hard to articulate to young people because they're not teaching it, and they should.
Right. Well,
Um,
we actually have a big garbage company here that sold. They won't tell me what they sold for, but they sold for north of 600 million and south of a billion. And their CFO came in and did a talk to the kids about, financial literacy. So like, who's a better guy to learn from than someone like that?
Talk to me about the kids and the nonprofit that you guys got going on. What is
Yeah.
it, and what are the kids are actually doing?
So for many years, I put posts up on social media about, how we need more people in the trade. And, a lot of it was pertaining to like, I needed more help, and a lot of people that I knew needed help. And, it was, you saw more so in your own industry, but then as you talk to more people, you see the need in every industry, even doctors and nurses. And, my accountant complains he can't find the right help. Like, there's a real skilled labor gap. And I don't just mean blue collar, it's skilled labor. Like, everything we do is technically a trade. Like, I'm friends with a surgeon. He considers himself a tradesman. He works on the human body. My dentist considers himself a tradesman. He works on the teeth, the mouth. So, we have to stop looking at it as like, oh, blue collar, white collar. It's industry. And, so what we do is we mentor these kids, because not every kid wants to go to college. But there are kids that want to go to college that come and approach us. And we put them in a room with 20 to 30 different mentors of all different industry who hire college kids and non-college kids. So essentially we're connecting kids that don't want to go to college and want to get a job right away out of high school. And then we're also connecting kids that do end up going to college. When they get out of college, they'll have a job. They're building and cultivating a relationship at 9th, 10th, 11th grade level and building that relationship. So if they do end up going to college and they get out, they have a job lined up and they have a relationship established. So we're really just teaching them how to network and, mentor them and give them advice along the way. And we do a fundraiser once a year. This will be our third fundraiser coming up in October. Our first year, we raised $97,000 in one night. Last year, we raised $108,000 in one night. I'm hoping to beat that pretty good this year. But what we do with the funding is it goes to, marketing to help raise awareness, anything we need with the charity, videography, stuff like that. But it also goes to, once we get the kids job placed in that career. Last year, we had about 10 kids get drill impact on drill bit set, a $500 gift card to a local hardware store here, Brinkman's. 9 of them got that, and one of them got a $500 gift card to Men's Warehouse to buy a suit because he was going into hospitality. So
That I
it's
love
pretty
that.
cool. Yeah. So it's cool. And everyone that comes gets kind of a high from it after the meeting, because, you're talking to kids and you could say one thing to one right person and change the whole trajectory of their life.
Sure can.
And, it's giving back. So
Where's my
really
invite, man? I gotta.
cool. I would love for you to come up. We have monthly meetings. It's usually the second Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
If you're ever in Long Island, you're more than welcome. We have it at a venue, a wedding venue on the water in Babylon. The guy who owns it used to be a waiter when it was called John Anthony's. Now it's called the Piermont, and he owns it. And he also owns 2 other restaurants. So he's got a great story. So everyone there has a great story of like kind of humble beginnings to where they are now. So it's cool. And it's not just business owners. It's managers of companies, VPs of companies, union presidents, non-union people. And it's really interesting.
Okay.
So.
I know how to get out there, man. I could probably do that if you just DM me. I'm up in New York once a month, so I could
August 13th.
August 13th. So that one I'm not going to be at because I'm going to be in Dallas.
Right,
I'm actually about to move to Dallas. So
nice.
And I'm moving. I'm closing on my house next week.
Oh, so, congratulations!
Yeah, so I got a lot going on, but
I'm actually looking up. I'm going to hold you to it.
Maybe before the end of the year.
Be the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but usually second Wednesday of the month.
I'm up in New York once a month, so one of these times I will absolutely make it a point to be there on purpose on a day that I can go out there.
I would love it. It's awesome.
And it's at night, right?
Yeah, it's at we get there at 6. Kids, the meeting starts at 7. So, and we put out a spread of food.
Well, perfect.
I should say my buddy puts out a spread of food, and it's nice. So
awesome.
Good stuff.
So how can people, if you're young and you're in the Long Island area, how do people find, that group, and how do they find that opportunity to, get such good mentorship?
So it's called the Ryan Anthony Head Start Fund is the name of it. But we made the website. You could look it up that way on the website, or you could look up lookwhomadeit.org, nonprofit. And the reason behind Look Who Made It is it's not about me. It's because so many kids, when they graduate high school and they go in, to their graduation, you'll see Look Who Made It. And it's all kids going to college. And my wife's a teacher. She's a reading teacher. And she said, I never see my kids on that list because, she's a reading teacher. And, most likely those kids aren't going to go to college, just like I was a reading student. And she said, it's really not fair because there's nothing really to prop them up. And they graduated high school. No one's talking about them because everyone's concerned with who's going to what college. And then she said, you know what? My husband wouldn't be on that list either. But look at my husband now. And that's part of the reason where we started the nonprofit, because a lot of moms and dads are contacting me weekly to hire their kid. And I realized I can't hire everybody. I could hire 1 or 2 kids a year. No. So by having this nonprofit, I open up my doors to potential opportunities for these kids. So, all right, if I can't hire you, come to the meeting and meet another HVAC guy or another contractor or, whoever, and start a career. So it's cool.
So that's awesome. So you got to go look at Ryan Anthony Head Start or Look Who Made It. And if there's ever posts promoting those people, either DM it to me or maybe even tag me in it. And I'd love to prop those kids up as well. I can tell you, I have somebody working for me now that was working at a pizza shop in Westchester, and I'm not going to share his salary, but he's getting taken care of, and he is just kicking ass, absolutely kicking ass. And I mean, he went to school, but it's totally irrelevant to construction. Put it that way. It has absolutely nothing to do with construction. And he could have did it probably 4 years ago because he's just a smart, driven kid. And I've worked with young people that have worked at grocery stores, and now they're assistant project managers in construction. And I think that, if I could ever, offer advice or any insight into how to start a career like that, because I think a lot of kids, although maybe too many kids just look at it as like indentured servitude. Like if I go into the trades or I go into a blue collar world, then that's what I'm going to be doing forever. And they don't realize that there's actually career growth there.
If you want it.
And a lot of people, when they get it, they're like, holy shit, put me back in the field.
Yeah. We talk about that so much because it's like, and it doesn't make you a bad person if you don't want to take the risk and get to the next level. It doesn't. But don't become the old guy and then downplay it to the future generation that just because you don't want to see them succeed you. So that's the trick there. But absolutely.
Yeah. So Ryan, I appreciate you coming on. I like to give anybody the floor. Talk about anything that any message you have, or if you were hoping that you were going to get to talk about something, the floor is yours.
For me?
Yeah.
No, I think we pretty much hit everything. I mean, that whole fire thing is a good story, but we'll save that, I guess. Okay. But I have a good videographer, so he does some cool videos. We have like 4 different, Instagrams and social media pages. I have a TikTok that I try to encompass everything onto. Mm-hmm. It's Ryan Anthony at the TikTok. But if you look up Ryan Anthony's Heating Service or the Ryan Anthony Head Start Fund on Instagram, I don't know if you checked out that page. Yep. It has, like, we just posted a video from last month's meeting. So every month we post a picture of the kids who are there, and then my videographer makes a video about that, captures some of the discussion. So it's pretty cool.
So I go check that out, man. Ryan Anthony's Heating, and the Ryan Anthony Head Start Fund. Brian, I appreciate you coming on here. Very impactful story. It's a story that I would want my son to walk. Like if I were to tell my son and I have a 3 and a 1-year-old daughter, I think it's actually highly likely that my daughter is doing something dirty in construction. I could just feel it. But I don't know that I would recommend college to either of them. I think I would recommend getting into a trade, getting experience, and going from there and working towards entrepreneurship just like you have. So, and I don't think that their path would be too far off from what you've been able to accomplish. And I think it's a path that more people need to hear. Well. So yeah. I'm glad that you took the time to come on here. I appreciate it. Make sure you go follow Ryan. And I appreciate everyone for listening. See you next time.